Hey everyone, I just thought I would touch base with you through a video because it's probably a lot shorter to watch a video than try to read a long email. So I decided to send this link out to you so you could take a look at it prior to our meeting. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Virginia Beach and some other tournaments and events that we have done over the last year that were brought up in our meeting last month. So the previous discussion was Virginia Beach from our last meeting. It was mentioned that we had never voted on Virginia Beach. And actually, the reason why we never voted on it isn't because it wasn't on the agenda, but it's actually been on the agenda at two different board meetings. It was on the agenda in the annual meeting in July of 2022, and was actually on the agenda in the fall board meeting, the directors meeting of 2022 as well. And it's also in the minutes of each one. And all this is actually on the website if you'd like to go take a look at it. But the reason why it wasn't voted on is because of the fact that it was just a replacement. It was a replacement tournament for what had been dissolved of the USA Folkstyle High School National Duels. That had been previously in Indiana. There were other events that were in those same meetings, the annual meeting of 22 and the fall meeting of 22. One of them was the Freeco Elementary National Duels, and the other one was adding a high school division to the Heartland National Duels. The Freeco National Duels was never voted on either, and the reason why is that we had been trying to get that on since COVID of 2020. So the board knew that this is something that the organization wanted to do. There was never any opposition to starting a Freeco Elementary National Duels. And so at the annual meeting of 22 and the fall meeting of 22, it was more of informational, saying that, hey, looks like we're going to get on board and we're going to be able to get this done this year. No one ever said anything about not wanting to do it. So I worked very hard, and we actually accomplished putting on the Freeco Elementary National Duels in 2023. The Heartland High School Division was brought up at those same two meetings, the annual and the fall meeting. And again, the Heartland one, there was no vote either, but it was an expansion to an already existing tournament, and we wanted to make sure that we continued to grow that tournament, and there was no opposition as well. As far as Virginia Beach, like I said, this was a replacement tournament. And the kids had been going all the way up to prior to COVID of 2020 over to Indiana. And it was the USA High School Folkstyle National Duels. And it was had been held there several years, and it was usually about 23 teams. Pretty good quality competition. It was canceled because of COVID, like everything else was in 20 and 21. And then in 22, I got a hold of the guy finally at the end, like late fall of 21, and they told me that for 22, like it was permanently canceled. And by that time, although I was trying to figure out something for our high school kids to do, our state tournament of 2022, we had no place for our kids to go. It was too late to try to put something together for Heartland, and it was too late in the game. So our kids came to the state tournament in 2022, and they didn't have, there was no national dual team for them to qualify for. So that's why that our annual meeting of 22, fall meeting of 22, by that time I had something put in place to replace that tournament, and that's why there was never a vote. So if we would like to vote, that's fine. Well, we're gonna vote on the Freeco Elementary National Duels as a separate item, and adding a high school division to Heartland as a separate item, and we can vote on Virginia Beach, all these things. But I just want everyone to know that it's not like, I'm not trying to pull something over on people. I wouldn't do that to you. These are things that have been discussed and have never been opposed at any one of those two meetings that we've currently already had. I personally made it my goal to make sure that this event of taking the high school team to Virginia Beach got off on a good start. I was the team leader. I was the head coach. I had 7 other coaches that helped coach the other teams. And with the things that I had done with national teams prior, I've taken over 40 national teams across the country for Nebraska USA Wrestling. I wanted to make sure that, hey, this is a big trip. We're going to try to make sure it's successful. And I'll tell you that out of my 23 years of taking dual teams all over the country for Nebraska USA Wrestling, that trip was the most successful trip that I have ever seen of any national team since I've been part of Nebraska USA. Now you may say, well, the boys didn't place. That's fine. The girls placed fourth in the nation at a tough tournament. And I can tell you this, I don't always measure success based on what place the teams got at the tournament I took them to. There's several things that I take into consideration when I measure the success of a national dual team trip. One of those is participation of the kids. We had 4 teams, we had 50 kids. There were only 2 open weight classes and they were the heavyweights. And every time there happened to be an injury or somebody couldn't go at the last second, I had those positions filled within 24 to 48 hours. It showed just how many kids across the state wanted to be on this team. We never had any trouble filling spots all the way up to even the last few days before we left. We had one weight that was filled 24 hours before the bus left, and they jumped right on it because they wanted to be on this team so bad. Next is competition. Obviously, there's great competition there, and I believe our boys competed very well, and our girls placed 4th in the nation for the Virginia Beach. And I believe that through our state tournament and the more marketing of this event, this trip, then we will get even more kids coming to it, and even getting higher quality kids from our state, and we'll do better and better at this tournament every year. The other thing is, did the kids get better? On a trip like this, the kids definitely get better. They get beat, they learn. They win, they learn. And they step up to the competition, whether they win or lose. And they definitely got better for going on that trip. Next is a memorable experience. I mean, some of you may not think that that's important, but I believe it's very important to have a memorable experience on these trips, and they have a good time on the charter bus, on the way there, on the way back. Kids talk about these trips like this for the rest of their lives. It's some of these kids have never even been outside of the state of Nebraska, and going on a trip like this and being at the hotel and being around their friends, and yes, the competition is great. All of those things, but a memorable experience is super important to make sure that you have on a trip such as this. Another thing is just coming back in one piece. That I will say that trip was probably the hardest trip that I was on to ensure that it's because it was a lot of kids. I've never had that many kids on a national dual team before. And it was the first time that I had ever had boys and girls. And so that was certainly different for me. But we did come back in one piece, and I always consider that a success. And the last thing is placement. Sure, we all want to place. We all go there because we like to place and win an award. Our girls did take 4th place, and we actually left some girls at home that I believe our girls could have easily beat that team for 3rd, no problem. And like I said, the boys are definitely going to get better, because we're going to get better kids at our state tournament and wanting to go on this trip in the future. Lastly, I want you to know that I did go back through and redid the budget for Virginia Beach. And, last year was our first year, so there was a lot of unknowns for us, and we got hotels, and they ended up being very expensive on the weekend. We did not realize they were going to be that much, or at least I didn't, but it was costly, very costly. And I've gotten this budget way down further than what it was last year. I sent you over a Word document that you can look at. It shows what the budget was last year and what I have it down to this year. For our cost, it's going to be less than $9,000. Last year we were right around $25,000, and that ends up being about $200 a kid. For a dual team, that is very, very cheap. All of our dual teams last year were supplemented with about $500 per kid, and that included Fargo as well. So that's really all I had to say. I'm hoping that this kind of helps the meeting go along quicker this evening, because we'd like to try to stay within that hour time frame. I appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I'll see you this evening, and we'll talk to you soon.